I have to say, I feel like a rock star. This is amazing.
Wow, so many wonderful humans out there.
Not so skeptical now, are we, about psychology?
Love life and enjoy every moment.
Oh, well, hi everybody. It's good to be with you. Thank you. I feel like I've done my job already. I've told you don't pack your kids' lunch and you're a parenting expert. My wife and I are the parents of 6 children. So I feel like I've had a bit of experience with this whole lunch packing thing. And if you look carefully at the image, you'll note that those 6 children are all girls. Yeah, I get laughed at a lot when I say that. I don't know why. I'm delighted with these kids, and they're the reason that I'm here today. I used to be a radio announcer. I worked for one of the country's biggest radio stations at Brisbane's B105, where we played all of today's best music while you worked. And I had 2 kids and had no idea how to raise them and made so many mistakes. My family didn't look like this. It probably looked a little more like this.
There you go. Look alive. You're eating that donut.
Lorraine, pass me the napkin. No more! Get off! Get him, Charlie! He's headed for the waffles! Come on, Charlie! Come today! Come on!
Put Beans in his cage now.
So one of the most surprising things for me when I went back to uni was that it wasn't just my family that was struggling. It seems that, in fact, this was an article in the Sydney Morning Herald 7 years ago about this very conference. Happiness is not having the children. We are so happy when our children are born. We look at one another and say, my goodness, it doesn't get any better than this. And within about 2 days, we realized we were right. And our happiness goes like this continually. As they get older, we discover that, I don't know, maybe they've got some health difficulties, or they get to school and they're struggling to make friends, or they've got a learning difficulty, or they're getting bullied, and then they get to high school, and then they turn 16, and our happiness levels are about here, and they go like that, and they kind of stay there until the kids move out of home, and the research says that then we feel happy again. And I thought, that doesn't sound like the kind of family that I want to have. I want to have a happier family. So my positive psychology PhD was really all about discovering what makes families work and what doesn't. And I discovered as I worked through this with about 1,000 Australian families that there's a small subset of parents who seem to create a culture of happiness and well-being in their homes that leads to very different outcomes. Now, I can't give you the whole list of all that they do. We don't have time for that today, but I can give you the 3 main things that they do. And I think that if you want to make your family happier, these 3 things can change everything. The first thing is love. The second is limits. And the third, to keep the alliteration going, is laughter. So let's talk about each of these just briefly and see if you can do something about implementing love, limits, and laughter in your families, however they're constituted, starting today. Let's start with love. There's a wonderful old quote. It's a little bit trite. It's overused, but I just love it. To a child, love is spelled T-I-M-E. How do your mornings look if you've got a young family? Do your children feel that you have time for them in the mornings? As you're saying, where's your bag? Get me your bag. Hurry up and get me your bag. What do you mean you don't know where your bag is? Did you carry it home yesterday? Well, where did you? If you put it away, well, get me your lunchbox at least so that I can. Where's your lunchbox? What? You know, well, your shoes. And we we tend not to be patient and kind and have time in the mornings, do we? And yet the number one tip that I can give to do this is that we just stop, look and listen. We usually talk about that when we're going to cross the road. You've got to stop, look and listen before you cross the road. Why? Because there's these great big fast-moving heavy things that roar down the road that can cause some terrible damage if they hit you. In our children's lives, metaphorically, there are still great big things roaring down the highway of their lives. And sometimes they need us to be there with them, to stop, look and listen, so that they can navigate that road safely. I worked with a family some years ago before it was fashionable to talk about grateful things at dinner. We were talking about all the hard stuff that was going on in their lives and in their family, and we agreed that if they could just stop at mealtime, be together as a family and talk about things that they were thankful for, things that they'd appreciated, if not during the day, maybe during their lives. Could that help their family be happier? I followed up with them a week or two later. I said, how's things going? They said, well, we've tried this and we've tried this and we've tried that. We did all these things you said, but the one thing that's made the most difference is that stopping and looking and listening when our kids talk to us, especially at dinner time. We were at dinner one night, and as we sat and talked to the kids, one child in particular didn't want to tell us what she was grateful for. The rest of the family spoke, and then finally we said to her, well, would you like to share with us now? What are you grateful for? She shook her head. Well, what makes you happy? She looked at them and she said, right now is the thing that has made me happiest today. Sometimes our kids just need us to stop, look and listen. They need us to take time. As we do so, they feel our love. Now, the second idea is a bit trickier. The second idea is limits. And as parents, we can struggle with this, and our kids push against our limits all the time. I want to share with you what I call the 3 E. You've heard my 3 L's, love, limits, and laughter. Now I'm going to give you my 3 E's of effective discipline. The 3 E's of effective discipline are these: explain, explore, and empower. It's the best discipline strategy I know, and here's how it works. We explain exactly what it is that we're asking and why. We provide a clear rationale for our request. We explore how it is for them. We see the world through their eyes. We stand in their shoes. And then we empower them. We ask questions like, how can I help you with this challenge? Where do you think we should go from here? Well, what do you think? I like this one. This is my favorite. If you were in my position, what would you think was best? Forces them to take another perspective. Another one that's even better is, well, I know you think it's okay for you to do. If it was your little sister or your little brother, what would you say then? All of a sudden they're like, oh, no, I don't think so. And we can always just say, well, how do we move past this? Let me give you an example, a real life example from my own family of where I've used the 3 E's of effective discipline to wonderful effect. My 13-year-old daughter says to me one day, Dad, can I please have Snapchat? I'm the only kid in my grade that doesn't have Snapchat. Have you noticed that they're always the only one that doesn't have it? Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Snapchat and you're thinking, what is this Snapchat thing? People who have smart devices can download an app. It's called Snapchat. And Snapchat is kind of like text messaging that teenagers do. You know, as adults, we do text messages. This is all done on either photographic messages or video messages. And once it arrives, it self-destructs a few seconds later, depending on how long they allow somebody to view their snap. And I've got concerns about Snapchat. There's about 4 billion snaps sent per day globally. About 2% of them are what we would call explicit content. And 2% isn't a great amount until you consider what 2% of 4 billion is. And so I said to my daughter, let me explain a few things to you about my concerns with Snapchat. I'd like you to not have it. Here's why. Boom, 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 boom. She started to roll her eyes. I said, okay, all right. Let's explain it a different way. Why don't you explain to me why you think I don't want you to have it? He said, fine. And now, this is important because when we get them to explain it to us, it gets their brain working. While we're explaining it to them, you know where their brain's gone, don't you? So I asked her to explain it to me, and as she did so, she did a great job, but I identified a few wonderful gaps in her knowledge that I was able to then fill in. I said, so as a result, my precious little ray of sunshine, you will not be having Snapchat. And she said, Dad, I've been to your seminars. I know that after you've explained things to me, you have to explore. You need to know what's going on in my world and how it feels to be me so that we can have a better conversation about this. I was like, I'm not taking the kids anymore. Anyway, so we had a great conversation. And she told me all the reasons that she had to be not the only person in her grade to miss out on Snapchat. At the end of the conversation, I said, well, now that I understand how things are for you, the answer's still no. And she said, but Dad, you haven't really seen it. You can't empower me if you haven't really seen it. I said, I'm not empowering you anyway. The answer's no. But what do you mean I haven't really seen it? She said, well, you get it here, but you don't get it here. I said, oh, you're good. Why don't you help me to get it here a little bit better? See, in my mind, you can already talk to all of your friends on Facebook. Why do you need to be on Snapchat where there's all this other risk? She was thoughtful and she said, Dad, you telling me to talk to all my friends on Facebook while they're all on Snapchat is like you telling me to go play at the park while all my friends are at the beach. And I went, oh, that's good. Oh, but hang on a second. At the beach, there are rips and currents and sweeps and waves, and there are syringes in the sand and glass bottles, and there's sunburn, and there's stingers in the water, there's jellyfish, and there's sharks and blue bottles, and there's perverts. And she looked at me, rolled her eyes, and said, Dad, have you been to the park lately? Smart kid. So I said, all right, well, now I guess I can see what you're saying. How about we work out where to go from here? She said, oh, I thought you'd never ask. And so we had this wonderful, empowering conversation. I said, well, what would you do in my situation? Where would you go from here? Now, she didn't say this, but I want to extend the metaphor just because it's fun. She essentially said to me, hey, Dad, if I promise to go to the beach and wear a hat and a sun shirt and sunscreen and only swim between the flags or play in the rock pools and not talk to any strangers, do you think that you'd let me go to the beach then? I said, that's a pretty cool deal. I like that. Let's try it. Let's see if you can go to the beach safely. So when we spend the time and we show that we love them, when we set limits by explaining, exploring, and empowering, we get much better results than saying, it's my way or the highway. Do as I say. It's my house, it's my rules. It tends not to reflect a whole lot of love. And what it really does is well, you know, how many times have you heard somebody say, if I ever catch you doing that, so help me, there'll be trouble. And the kids look at their parents and they're like, don't worry, you won't catch me doing that. I'll be very sneaky about it if I'm going to try that again. And we push unwanted behavior underground. It just doesn't work. The research shows that when we explain, when we explore, when we empower, we just get better results. Now, the last thing that I want to talk to you about is this third principle, the principle of laughter. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but if you watch parents in public with their children, they don't do this much. They just don't smile. Parents have gritted teeth. And when they're in public and they're talking to their children, they'll often say things like, I'm trying to be calm and I'm smiling at you while I'm saying this, but I'm not feeling good at all. And parents don't seem to be happy in the park, in the shopping center, anywhere when they're with their kids. Wouldn't it be great if we could just laugh a little more? If we could be a little more relaxed around the kids? If we could just kind of give them some space? I went for a bike ride one day. I'm a mammal, a middle-aged man in Lycra. And I'm sorry for those of you who didn't want that image, but I love to get on my bike and go for a bike ride. And I got back with a friend after about a 100k bike ride through the Royal National Park one day and went to get in the pool. The kids were already in the pool. I dipped my toe in. It was freezing. It was like ice. I decided I wouldn't have a swim. I turned around to Dave, my 42-year-old friend with no children, bachelor, lives a very easy life. And as I started to say to him, I think it's a bit too cold to get in the pool, I felt this pain, this icy pain in the small of my back. And I went, as I turned around, I noticed one of my children in the pool with a super soaker. And she had been and I was thinking of all the things that I might say to her as a parenting expert with an audience who has no children. Nothing came immediately, and as I was trying to work out how to respond to her ruining my day, she picked the super soaker out of the pool again. She aimed it at Dave's chest. And in slow motion, and the water, and I thought, I'm going to have to take one for the team. I'm about to dive into the pool. I realized the water had already gone past me. It was going to hit him anyway. And I thought, oh no, he's going to say a bad word in front of the children. What am I going to do now? The water hit Dave in the chest. And here's what he did. And he splashed into the pool. And the kids swam over to him and they jumped on him. And in that moment, I thought to myself, my goodness, Justin, you have forgotten how to have fun. You have forgotten how to laugh. You're the parenting expert who just gets cranky at the kids all the time because they're not quite perfect yet. You need to have more fun with your kids. So may I leave with you a couple of ideas for how we can have more fun and more laughter with our kids. The first is music. I don't know if you've noticed this, but kids love music at any age. And they don't necessarily love your music. But perhaps you might give them the opportunity to play music loudly in the house, and you might even dance with them and have some fun with them with music. It changes the mood, and it can do so very quickly, often for the better. The second idea is that we need to find the funny. There's got to be stuff that's funny that's out there. Can we find ways to be funny? A little while ago, one of my kids' bedrooms, her wardrobe was covered in clothes. You know what I'm talking about. Nothing in the wardrobe, all on the floordrobe. I wrote a note, I put it on the floor, I said, there's something on the floor in your room, and as you tidy up your floordrobe, I think you'll find it, and you'll be glad you did. She comes to me about 10 minutes later holding this little slip of paper, going, very funny, Dad. I said, what? Dear Chanel, so nice to see you again. Love the carpet. Can we find the funny? A wonderful friend of mine by the name of Wally, he was teaching his child to drive. She was sitting in the driver's seat. He was sitting beside her. They were heading towards a left-hand bend. You know what happens when you overshoot a left-hander? You go straight through the oncoming traffic. He's saying to her, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, stop. She couldn't find the brake. She went through 2 lanes of oncoming traffic. Nobody hit her. The car hit the curb front on, mounted the curb. She found the brake and came to a skidding stop as the bumper of the car kissed the petrol station sign. No damage to the car, no damage to the sign. Wally looked at her, saw that she was okay, realized she didn't need to be disciplined anymore. She'd learnt her lesson. Then he turned to the back seat and said to his wife and kids, okay? He had his wife and 2 other children in the back. Oh. Then he clapped his hand and said, well, while we're here, does anyone need to use the bathroom? And the ways that we can find the funny, can we find some opportunities to laugh? Can we put on accents? Can we act and dance and play around? My suspicion that is if we can do that, we will make our families happier. Here's another idea, stop, drop and roll. I know that sounds like we're putting out a fire, but I can't tell you how many times I've given this advice. When you get home, I know you just want 10 minutes to decompress. But what would happen, particularly for those of you with young children, if when you got home, you laid down on the carpet and said something like, oh my goodness, I'm so tired, I think I'm going to lay here for the rest of the night unless somebody comes and jumps on me. Have you ever seen what children do when you do that? They will find you and they will find you fast. And once you've had 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of wrestling with them, you'll be so glad you did, and so will they. And it will change your night. Can we stop, drop, and roll around? And lastly, what about creating some fun traditions? Traditions don't have to be heavy and hard. Traditions can be as simple as saying, you know what? Every Saturday from now on is Super Saturday. We're going to spend 1 to 2 hours and do something that's low cost or no cost because it's fun. We're going to go and hike those wonderful Royal National Park cliffs, or we're going to climb to the top of a hill, or walk across the harbour bridge, or go somewhere or do something that doesn't cost anything because we can. We're going to do it as a family, and we're going to have joy. Can we go on a quarterly camp? Can we create something that is ours? Somebody told me once that was all too hard, so they just do Chip Tuesday. I said, what's Chip Tuesday? Well, we go down to the fish and chip shop, we buy some chips, and have chip sandwiches by the water. What a great tradition. If we want our families to be happier, they need three things. They need love, they need limits, and they need laughter. And if you can provide those three things to your family, it won't take 21 days, it might just take 21 seconds. Thank you.